Welcome back to the Neo Marketing Podcast. On this episode, we'll talk about how we find our target stakeholder.
Welcome to the weekly Neo Marketing Podcast, featuring one half of the Golden Group C-Suite, Kyle Golding, and Pritch Pritchard, APR, PRSA Fellow.
So Kyle, we've talked about this in the past and kind of glanced over the top of target stakeholders, finding your audience. Before I get into how I teach my students to do it, which I think our audience could appreciate and implement,
Sure.
I want to make some distinctions. In the marketing world, it's audience. In the journalism world, it's public. In the public relations world, it's stakeholder. We use those terms interchangeably. I automatically go to stakeholder. The other terms tend to relate to the relationship with the message.
Yes.
Stakeholder tends to relate to the relationship with the organization.
And stakeholder even can be different from organization to organization because there are different people that need to be influenced and included as a stakeholder.
Absolutely. My definition is anybody who is affected by or has an effect on the organization. And it's pretty inclusive, but it's not totally inclusive. And I don't mean ill will, but if you don't have an effect on the organization or are not affected by the organization, we simply don't have enough assets to worry about those other folks.
You're very secondary. Like you said, we're not mad at you. We just aren't going to spend our time and effort trying to influence you.
Right, exactly. So how do you find that target stakeholder, that person that you want your campaign to resonate with? I think it can be used.
Which makes it the most effective.
Absolutely. We only have X number of dollars and resources and people, and so we want to be efficient and effective with our communication, and that means finding the person for whom this thing will resonate.
Yes.
So the first place I start with my students is where I think everybody else starts: demographics, the psychographics.
Start at the basics, right?
Start with the basics. Start gathering all of that information.
Create a funnel and start weaning it down.
But then I use the segmentation strategy that some of the top scholars in public relations use, and that is looking at them in terms of power, influence, and legitimacy and urgency. Power is the ability to make somebody do something, make an organization do something perhaps they wouldn't ordinarily do. Vice versa, the organization can have an effect on a person and have them do something that maybe they weren't thinking about doing before.
Correct.
Legitimacy is a legal, perceived, or moral claim on the organization.
Okay.
And then urgency exists in two conditions. One is that it's important, and the second is that it's time sensitive.
And then you can put a timetable on it for your measurements when you're done.
And we're all we're necking down to giving us the ability to absolutely do that. So looking at the Venn diagram, if you create a Venn diagram with those three factors, the sweet spot is the very middle where they have power, legitimacy, and urgency.
Sure.
That's where we're gonna target folks. And then what I do is have them do a shorthand of that, because that's very theoretical and people don't tend to necessarily resonate to those particular terms. I have them do a persona, and it's clearly stolen from marketing, but I think it's a great shorthand, helping identify where they are on that Venn diagram, then taking a look at using the demographics, psychographics, sociographics to identify their values, their behaviors, their pain points, and their motivations.
By personifying it, by creating the persona, you're now thinking about and talking about real people.
Absolutely.
And not terms or job titles.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the idea.
Right.
Just as personification in literature helps you to understand, puts some more granularity on what we're talking about, I think that it's not only a great shorthand, but I think it does help us to readily identify the person that we're trying to reach with our campaign.
Because at the end of the day, you have two things happening here. You have your audience, who you're trying to affect, who they are, how they want to receive the information, and then the actual information.
Right.
And if the two of them are disjointed or can't connect, then all of your efforts will fail.
If the person values X and you're talking about Y, absolutely. That's the worst example.
Right. Or if you have extremely pertinent information that just doesn't get to the right person.
Right. And really, of those 4 things on the personification, I think the pain points are probably the most important. What is it? What are those impediments to their accepting the idea, accepting the campaign, moving their behavior?
If we didn't need to address these pain points, we wouldn't need the communication because they would already be doing it.
Right, exactly. They wouldn't have any pain points.
So we can assume that they have them, or at least either a non-understanding or a misunderstanding. Either way, all of these things can be addressed by proper communication in a proper channel, at the proper time, to the proper person, in the way they like to receive it.
Absolutely. In addition to pain points, values and behaviors are really important too. So what are they already doing, so that we can figure out how to move them in the direction that we need to move them? I mean, we're talking about persuasion. Persuasion's not a dirty word.
No, it's not.
So
it's not a dirty word when it's done honestly with just communication. We're not trying to trick anyone. We're just trying to provide information to their inbox, if you will, however they receive it.
Right.
That they connect with, and like you said, because of their things that they're already doing, they're already interested in, they're already motivated by, they're very likely to say, oh, this is something I want to engage in as well.
There you go. That's the long and the short of it. We spend about 4 weeks on that particular piece of information, and we gave it to you in what, 7 minutes, 8 minutes?
5 minutes to break down 4 weeks. So with that thought process, folks, we gave it a 30,000 foot level of how the process works, right?
Right.
If you guys have questions,
hit
us up. Hit us up on social media. Email us growth@thegoldengroup.com and ask any specific questions about how you get down into actual tactics. We'd love to answer those questions for you.
Absolutely. Don't forget, strategies first.
That's right. Start with that. Start with strategy. Do this work. Then you can begin to talk about tactics.
Right. Well, they'll pretty much fall out after you identify how you're going to approach things. So.
There you go, folks. So 4 weeks of high-level university education for you right there in
Right
5
here.
minutes on the Neo Marketing Podcast. Until next time, good luck.
That's how we roll. Ciao.